Oh, you're
Yeah, it was a little bit before. Like I had an SLR before that. This is in the days of slide film, but the interest had been born. I loved being in the outdoors, so I was hiking. I didn't really start fly fishing until I returned from my mission. Like it feels like a lifetime sport at this point. And that's probably because I'm freaking old, but
The youngest of the four of us, by the way.
still, I don't know, man. I feel like the clock is ticking. I feel every tick of that clock.
that's not age. That's entrepreneurship.
That's probably right. That's probably right. You can speak to that.
Welcome to BrainStoke. I'm Tom Telford here with Preston Niederhauser and Kevin Day. We have a trifecta, the three amigos in the house today with Adam Barker. Thanks for being here. We're excited to dive into this and hear all about the best leg shaving products on the planet.
Yes, sir. Thank you for having me. I'm stoked to be here.
Cool.
Adam, it's awesome to have you. Thank you for setting aside the time for this. Just a little intro. Adam Barker, world-renowned photographer, made an incredible name for yourself in the outdoor sports, ski industry, wildlife, scenery photography, all that stuff. X Games gold medalist in the house. Pretty cool. I'd love to hear a little bit more about that.
We can talk about that. We can talk about that.
Yeah. And entrepreneur, as you've built this life as a professional photographer, that's a bit of an entrepreneur, but you've deviated to a whole new product and realm that we're excited to talk about and hear a little bit of the backstory, all the ups and downs, plenty of that, right?
Lots of, there's all the things. We can talk about all the things. There's many things that have been packed into this suitcase of photography and entrepreneurialism and fatherhood and a lot of things.
Keeping it professional with a suitcase.
That's right.
Yeah.
Adam,
Yes.
what flavor of Skintimate inspired Bolt?
Ooh.
I think it was Raspberry Rain, the old double R.
I'm pretty sure that is where my life began as a leg shaver.
I appreciate, this is a full circle moment. I was just at Ironman St. George. It's our set. We literally just launched Bolt Skin and Shave 3 weeks ago. We launched at Sea Otter Classic. And, last minute decided to do Ironman St. George. So packed the truck, took the booth down there. But the impetus for Bolt was inspired by shaving my legs in my wife's aunt's, this is random, but wife's aunt's shower at her place in St. George. And I picked up I'd been shaving my legs for 20 years with a pink razor and a bar of soap. And we're staying at her house on vacation. And I'm like, what is this? We'll try this out. And it's Skintimate raspberry. I was like, that smells nice. I don't know. It's the most masculine smell, but it does smell nice. And I shave my legs with it. It's a gel to foam shaving gel. And I was like, it's like the world had been opened to me. And I was like, this is amazing.
This was an out of the closet moment for you, wasn't it?
100%.
I can see it.
And believe it or not, so I was just there last week and I told Julie is my wife's aunt's name. I'm like, this is where it all started right here.
Man.
This is where the idea hatched.
Literally
Had a moment,
slope.
right? Yeah, right. Literally.
The slippery slope.
Yeah.
Adam, I'm digging these Jordans you've got on. Pretty
Thank
cool. I want to hear more about the Jordan love, which is, I'm going to segue this just real quick. Levo is the sponsor. Levo, lift, uphold, support, mental health company. So between the Jordans and Levo, we're all about, lifting today. So
Yes.
Thank you, Levo. Great to have your support in all of these ventures. Say more, Adam. Say more about Bolt, and I want to circle back to a number of things, but so that was the launch a few weeks ago.
Yeah. So, really kind of have been working on this, 16 to 18 months in earnest. I had an idea, saw a gap in the marketplace. Obviously, I know a lot of men that shave their legs. for me, it's totally normal as a cyclist. You know, I've been a cyclist the better part of my adult life, and I don't pretend to be any bigger, stronger, faster than anyone else. I love it, you know. And I think as many people that enter that cycling world, you're like, well, I guess I'm getting rid of this leg hair because it seems like that's what you do, right? Like, I have no idea why you do it, but everybody's doing it, and here I am. I'm in. And there's all the rumors of it makes you faster, you're more aero, all the things. And yes, it's true. I mean, there are like studies out there. Specialized does tests in their wind tunnel. Like you can save power, save watts, save time over a 40K race. But the honest truth is like for 99.9% of it, we do it because, you know, you start looking around and freaking sweater legs just doesn't hang out in spandex very much, you know? And then you come to find out you spend enough time on two wheels, you will spend some time down on the ground on two wheels.
Road rash.
Yeah, I hate picking hair out of road rash. So I thought on this for a while, did some research, and decided, you know, I thought for sure in my research, I'm like, there's gotta be a brand that does this. I know enough men that shave their legs, and I looked around, there wasn't one, you know, Manscaped, Harry's, Dollar Shave Club, Gillette, Schick, you name it. Not one picture of a dude shaving his legs, not one product, not one mention, not one wisp.
Kevin, resident expert, right? National champion cyclist. Why do men not come out of the closet with the leg shave? I mean, they show up, right? They look amazing.
They do.
But why are they not vulnerable in the moment? What's your deal?
I don't know.
What's the insecurity?
So I told Adam this story. I had a moment in high school where she had to be the cutest girl in school, and I was shaving my legs in high school, and I think this was kind of a dare for, you know, all the other cool kids, because I was just the kid that rode a bike and shaved my legs. But she came over in the hallway and sat down next to me and like started like put her hands on my legs, and she said, "You shave your legs, don't you?" And I was just like, "See, it's paying off." I told you guys.
Where was she going with the comment?
I think she was. I think
He did. Who cares?
Yeah,
He cut her off right there. He cut her off.
Yeah, I'm like, that's it. I'm good.
Oh,
Yeah.
man, I love it.
It's a shame, but you know, here we are.
Yeah.
I think you did an open casting call for a bunch of men like a couple weeks ago. I saw on your Instagram. I almost submitted Tom.
Oh,
Tom
man.
is the guy that should be there for
Yeah?
open
Why?
casting. I didn't.
Why?
I don't know.
You should have done it.
From the knee down, because my Christmas hams up top can't be in.
We did a casting call. So our launch video, if you haven't seen it, go on our website. It's boltshave.com. But, you know, my comfort space is in marketing and branding. And literally I wake up every morning at like 4:30 in the morning, for better or worse. And that's a lot of the time, that's when my best ideas come. And that's like, I'll jot some notes down on my phone. And so I've got like years worth of content at this point that we're going to put out, but I was trying to decide on what our launch video would be. And I had the idea of like an AA style support group for men who shave their legs.
Love it.
I love that.
And so I jotted some notes and then wrote a script like 3 months ago. And a production like this should cost like $75,000, like realistically, with crew and sound and talent and everything. And it's like, we certainly don't have that kind of money to drop on our launch video. So yeah, we put out a friends and family casting call and got some great talent, man. I mean, it is, you got to watch it. The opening line is, "I've been stealing from my girlfriend's vanity." You know, you got another guy that's like, "I do it after my wife and kids go to bed."
I do it in the shower.
Yeah, I do it in the
Like,
shower. We've got
So
Miki Sugaturaga. He's the tight end at the University of Utah. He was our football player. And, you know, he's dejectedly admitting that he's like, "I promised myself it'd only be once," you know, but here I am. And it worked so well. And the edit came together really well. I'm incredibly proud, you know, and from just, I guess that's where my experience in media and photography came into play, as I knew that with the right people, if we could just find the right people, because I felt like the idea was there that we could pull this off. And, you know, my buddy Nate Sorensen did an amazing job with shooting it. But yeah, Tom, we can get you in the next one because we're gonna do. My neighbor was the moderator, and he was his name's Matt Jensen, and I went to the DI and I got him some pleated khakis and like some nurse shoes and this ghetto polo shirt from Salt Lake Community College.
I love that.
TV.
That was awesome.
But it was so good. I couldn't be more fired up.
That's
on how it
awesome.
came
I love it. Even hearing you describe that, it reminds me, right? You're a brilliant storyteller. I love that. And you just describing that story, but it reminds me of, so my youngest son, James, he's actually turning 14 this weekend. But I remember the day at 12, he came in and it was this moment, right? Like the birds and the bees moment. He's like, "Hey, Dad, I've got a question and I don't really know like how you're going to feel about it." I'm like, "Yeah, let's do this, bro." Like I'm thinking girls, right? And he's like, "So like, when do you think I'm ready to shave my legs?" And I'm like, "Yeah, well, let's sit down. Let's talk about this. Like this is a big moment in every man's life." And admittedly, it was funny. Even my wife was laughing, but it was a moment because in a cyclist's life, right, which is, we joke about it, but as a little kid, if you grew up watching and kind of seeing the sport, it's part of identity, right? And so although we're joking about the vanity of it, it is funny how identity becomes such a big thing, in our lives. And so even men who are shaving their legs, like we laugh about it all the time. But when you show up on a group ride on a Tuesday night and there's 30 guys there's not one who's not shaven down, right? Like it's part of the identity. So I think that there's a lot there. There's a lot about owning kind of like your sport or how you want to be known in the world. And as dumb as it is, it's real, right? I mean, even the kits and the things that cyclists wear, it's all important. It's part of that identity. And, BrainStoke is all about telling the story of struggle. And this is kind of a how to transition this for your story, but identity's big. And as I kind of read about you and learned from Kevin in your story, let's go back a number of years, because your identity of growing up and sports and athletics and, your kind of persona, your identity was athlete, but it also was as a creative. And I'm fascinated to know the blend of those two things. So take us back, maybe in your teens or growing up, like tell us about you, identity in those years.
Yeah, I'd say for sure, one of the biggest things I wish when I was younger is that we had NICA, right? Like I swear I was one of the only dudes riding a mountain bike out of my group of friends. So I would go like by myself. I played soccer growing up. I loved soccer, but I was a hard worker. It is the typical hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard. And my coach would basically look me in the face and be like, "Son, you are certainly not the most talented." I'd be like, "Thank you for that." Noted. But he would acknowledge, I would come off the field on a stretcher, every game for my teammates. I loved that feeling of finding, of being part of a bigger endeavor. So I did like team sports. I wasn't necessarily the best, but then, I also found a particular penchant for suffering. I liked competing me against me. Like I liked finding my limit and then going beyond it. I liked the idea of that if I failed, then it was all on me. And while some people might hate that feeling, I actually love it because I can always better like my training. I can better my study. I can better my knowledge. I can better my network. I can better pretty much everything in my life, whether it's through myself or through those that surround me. And I like having that control. So I started getting more into, and obviously there was skiing and that was always a huge part, but I started getting a little bit more into mountain biking and then as, from a creative standpoint, actually the only formal training I ever had in photography, and to kind of give a little bit of background here, I have made my living for the past 15 years as a professional photographer. So in active lifestyle and outdoor photography, I produce work for clients like Yeti and Traeger and Skechers, LifeStraw, Muck Boots, a lot of destinations, a lot of the resorts. I've been fortunate to travel from Antarctica to Southeast Asia, many places in between. So I feel I feel incredibly fortunate to have lived this career in life as a creative. And I don't feel lucky. I think when people use the word lucky, I don't always love it, because I think luck implies some chance. I think fortunate is a great way to describe it, because I worked hard for everything that I have, but I feel very fortunate. Like, I'm in a great position, not just on my own merits, but on the merits of many others. But it's not like it just fell in my lap. In any case, so, you know, the only formal training I ever had in photography was a black and white film class in high school. And I didn't pick up a camera and think like, this is what I'm going to do for the rest of my life by any stretch of the imagination. I enjoyed it, but it really I served a mission for the LDS Church in Italy from 98 to 2000. During that time, I had started for sure enjoying photography more. And I wanted to share my experiences with others. And I found out that a good medium to do that was through photography. And so definitely started working on that craft and honing that craft. And
in Italy. Oh,
yeah, you know, it was a little bit before. Like, I had an SLR before that. This is in the days of slide film. But the interest had been born. I loved being in the outdoors. So I was hiking. You know, I didn't really start fly fishing until, you know, I returned from my mission. Like, it feels like a lifetime sport at this point, and that's probably because I'm freaking old. But
The youngest of the four of us, by the way.
still, I don't know, man. I feel like the clock is ticking. I feel every tick of that clock.
that's not age. That's entrepreneurship.
That's probably right. That's probably right. You can speak to that. But yeah, I kind of, you know, my real first foray into photography is in scenic landscape work. And that's where I kind of found my passion and my love for photography. It's where I found a talent. It's where I realized that there was a skill set there and a talent and something that should be developed. And that took a little bit, right? But I really loved going to these places and capturing them in their, you know, rarest and finest form. And then, you know, I didn't know that I ever really thought like, I'm going to do this for a living. And then, like, happens to me in so many instances of my life, the idea hatched somehow, and within seconds I was all in, for better or for worse. You know, sorry to my bosses that I worked for back in the day, but I was most likely browsing the internet or reading photography magazines and figuring out how then I was going to make a living as a photographer. And, you know, took a hot minute to talk my wife into shunning consistent paycheck, regardless of how meager it was. There was an absolute ceiling to working in PR in the industry, and it was very low, but the fun factor was through the roof, you know? But yeah, it took a while for her to get on board with that. But finally I realized from the style and from the technical know-how that I got from shooting scenic lifestyle work, I was able to then put somebody in that picture, like using a product or participating in an activity or showcasing a destination or an experience, which is obviously commercial photography. And that's when I really kind of transitioned to active lifestyle and outdoor work.
You alluded to it a minute ago, and I've heard you talk about this previously, but when I've heard you're being interviewed in the past, the thought came to me that you are the ultimate domestique, meaning you love the suffer and you love to suffer for other people. And you kind of talked about that as you're going to get carried off the soccer field on a stretcher. Even though you're not the best player, you're going to leave it all out there for your teammates, that kind of thing. Where did that mindset come from?
You know, I think that mindset originated with, and it really started when I got into photography, where everybody is so quick to like look at an image and pick it apart, right? Like, well, I would have done this, or it's not that great, or that sunset looks nuclear, or, you know, fill in the blank. And, you know, there's only so much that we'll ever accomplish like by ourselves. And I don't know when this happened, because most people will tell you that most people that I grew up with, and I know this, and I've tried to moderate it over the years, but that I'm overconfident and, maybe cocky at times. I'd like to think that has transitioned maybe from a youthful cockiness to just a more adult-like confidence that enables you to accomplish, as long as it's not off-putting and, arrogant. But I did realize at one point, it's like, if you can take joy in the success of others, like, that's a huge thing. And if you can be a contributor to that success, then you, like, how much more stoked can you be? How much more happiness can you have? Because there's only one of you. And how much success are you ever going to experience by yourself? There's how many billions of other people. So if you could be a part of that, and that's one thing that I've really tried to, like, imbue and impress upon my kids as they grow up, right? Because there's so much competition, there's so much cattiness, there's so much comparison. It's like, dude, try and find a way to be happy for others when they experience success, even if at times it might be at the cost of your own, right?
Was that concept taught in your house, or is that something you kind of figured out?
I mean, I was raised by great parents, incredibly tolerant, very patient, super understanding parents. But no, I think that's probably something I more discovered on my own.
Yeah.
With, I mean, we are midweek Mother's Day week. Tell us a little more about your parents, just mentality that you grew up with, what they were like, because clearly there's an achievement, accomplishment, drive, gene in the household, it seems like.
Yeah, I mean, very traditional home, right? I got one older brother, 4 younger sisters, so plenty of siblings. My dad, I come from a family of doctors. My dad's a retired ophthalmologist, so he had and very much the boomer generation. It's like, I got one job, I'm going to do it as well as I can, but I got one job, and at least in my household it was. And, he worked at the same place for 30 years at the Salt Lake Clinic. And I saw him go to work, and my dad is not a risk taker. He's about the nicest person you'll ever meet, but he's not a risk taker. He's not a guy that's going to go send a cliff on skis. He's not a dude that's going to be pulling rope, when he's water skiing, but he loves to do all these things. He's just not, so he was active, and my mom was active as well. If I were to sum them up, they're good people, right? And I think good people have a way of teaching by example. And so whether they said it or not, it wasn't as important as the fact that they did it. And then it's kind of my job, like, can I receive that? So they did a lot of good things. I think, in fact, doing is so much better than saying, because as a teenager, I mean, my mom and I especially, we clashed. We moved to the home that they live in now, near the mouth of Parley's Canyon, when I was in 8th grade. And the first time my neighbors ever saw me across the street was when my mom locked me out of the house in my underwear.
I like your mom.
Yeah. She doesn't mess around.
Little discipline like that nowadays.
And, this guy continues to be one of my best friends to this day. But he will recount often the story of, like, looking across the street and me being like, "Come on, Mom. I'm in my boxers. Just open the door." I can't remember what the argument was, but so we, to back up on that, like, I don't know how much I listened, to my parents. Obviously, as an adult, they've had an immense impact on me and in my childhood, but just watching how they operated, like, left a huge impact on me.
Yeah. That's cool. Did you ever hear your parents say, "Don't take that risk, don't do that thing"? I mean, obviously you were locked out of the house probably because, you were mouthing off or something, but
100%.
in terms of your lifestyle, did your parents encourage it, meaning they gave you the freedom, your agency to choose?
For the most part, they did. I mean, they kind of knew I was going to do what I was going to do, I think, not once, and to their credit, they weren't ever like, you're gonna work in the ski industry, so you're going and partying with Powder Magazine and going to baseball games with Mountain Sports Media and ski journalists. And they're like, is this a job? I'm sure that's what they were thinking. And then I'm sure they were quite nervous when I pursued what to them was going to be the starving artist, endeavor, right? But no, and I kind of, despite the fact that I was willing to take risks, whether it was like, on skis or, I was definitely adrenaline fueled when I was growing up. I think they were like, if you're not going to die, then go for it. You'll learn,
Totally. Outcomes will teach.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that's cool. We often ask those who are on the podcast just about parents, because I think it's fascinating to hear mid 40s, whatever age, demographic it is being interviewed, and what their parents are like, and just the difference between, parenting these days, and how many parents are so nervous to let their kids, you described right out of the gates, like suffering, like that to me is also one of the greatest teachers. Like, am I capable of doing hard things, And yet today there are so many parents who hard means hurt or, not good or whatever, and you want to protect them. So has that survived? I mean, you're a dad now, right? And so do you approach parenting that same way?
For the most part, yes. I was actually surprised as I had kids. I've got 3 boys, 17, 15, and 12. But I was actually surprised how nervous I would be, like watching my kids do the things that I'd done growing up. And another, infamous story, let's say, is, we were down at Lake Powell. We would go to Lake Powell for years, and it would be, my family, my parents had a timeshare and a houseboat down there. It was one of our great, favorite places to go growing up. And I think my son at the time, my oldest, I want to say he was maybe 8 or 9, so pretty small. And he's like, I want to go cliff jumping. And I'm like, all right, let's go. And started, small. And then there's a cliff that's pretty big. It was for sure 40 feet, which is big by any account and massive for like an 8-year-old. And I talked him through it. I talked him through all the things. I'm like, look, if you're going to do these things, you do it because you want to do it and you're comfortable with the risk. And let me tell you what the risks are, because you haven't done this before. Like, this is what can happen, and it might hurt, and you're probably not going to die. And in retrospect, I never should have let him do it at all. And my mother and my wife, let me know immediately after. But I did, it was kind of one of those seminal moments for me where I was like, I'm going to do the best I can to equip you with all the knowledge that you need to make this decision on your own. Now, really, at 8 or 9 years old, they still probably shouldn't be making those decisions on their own. So he jumped. He you could tell he thought he was going to hit the water about 15 feet before he hit the water. And so kind of landed on his back, knocked the wind out of his little body. I did get some really great shots of this. I did have camera in hand.
Nice.
We have documentation, I'm embarrassed to say. And I got ripped a new one by my wife and by my mom. But I also, and it's a new dad learning experience, but I also that's kind of my approach, is it's, I want to shelter you from something that might kill you or maim you for life, whether that's emotionally or physically. But if it's not, I want to give you all the information that you can to make the best decision possible. But I want you to get comfortable with making decisions, because that's what this life is about.
Totally. I think that's brilliant and hard, by the way.
Yeah, very hard.
I've been in those moments too. Preston and I, years and years ago, when Jackson, who's, 22, and, Mitt, who's 21, we took him to a bike race. It was downpour, cyclocross race, probably the worst conditions on the planet. And the talking to we got after that, I think, from our spouses was not necessarily a good one. But it was learning for them at that age, to do hard things, and covered in mud and a mess, and we wouldn't let them stop, and that'll hopefully stick, for years to come. But I'm curious because in your description, you kind of described being athletic, skiing, fishing, doing these things growing up, obviously photography. What informs you? I'm interested to know, as I meet people who are creative, they have an eye that they just see it different. I see it in your photography. What informs that capability to just see things different? Is there someone or something, or is it just you honed it in over time knowing like I just see it different?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's a real introspective question. I think it comes, like, if I'm talking about photography specifically, I think it comes with a deep and intense passion for photography, but I think that can be applied on a larger stage to an interest or desire or a passion for something. I think for me personally, if I get interested in something or something, grabs my eye, I'm all in. And, with photography, it was specifically, I just devoured other images. I devoured the work of other photographers, which in photography is really common, right? You get, the only way anybody really ever starts is because it's pretty rare for somebody to just be like, I've never seen any other images, I'm going to start shooting pictures, just because it feels right. Or I like the way this camera feels, does what it does. It's usually because you've seen something or somebody's work that caused you to want to then do something similar. And so you go through this journey of photography where you're really kind of mimicking other people. And I've talked about this a lot in lectures and in online courses. And when I talk to younger photographers, it's like, that's great. It's really great that, and I've talked about this, a lot with other photographers throughout my time as a lecturer and when I've done online courses and just kind of mentoring others. It's really great to have that North Star for, at the beginning and to kind of help you find your path in photography, but spend a good amount of time establishing your own style and portfolio. And it'll happen. Don't just go and try and imitate what everybody else is doing. But so, yeah, I think that way of seeing, whether it's specifically in photography or whether it's entrepreneurship, whether it's fatherhood, whether it's, being a good human being, is directly tied for like a zest and a zeal for life or whatever your endeavor might be. And I also should add, and I know this doesn't apply to all the listeners, but my faith, forms a lot of my outlook on life and what I do. And, trivial consequence versus eternal consequence in my eyes. And I don't want to say consequence in a bad way. I'm talking about the things that matter, right? Like, because we get so caught up in so many things that in the big picture, they don't really matter.
Yeah.
What really matters?
That's a great question. For me, it's family first, 100%, no matter what. I don't care what else I'm doing. If my relationship with my kids and my wife aren't in a good state, then I don't care how many pictures I've shot, how many gold medals, how many dollars are in the bank account, et cetera, et cetera. So, and that comes directly from how I was raised, right?
How do your three boys, how are they involved with Bolt?
Well, they're putting together shipper boxes right now in the garage, or they better be if they're not at school.
Family first.
Yeah, at the moment, they're probably in
As long as you're
school, but
working for them.
they've been putting shipper boxes together. Ashton, my oldest, is actually quite creative. He's had some great input on some of our content. My 17 and my 15-year-old just shaved their legs for the first time. They're all the way in. And that was another moment that it was kind of like comparable to like Ashton jumping off the cliff. I was like, well, I want you to do it, but freaking be careful. This is sharp, So they're shaving their legs, which is full circle. It's hilarious. And honestly, I truly think, and I love this, I think it was to support, like, they're curious.
Yeah.
But it was probably more to support dad and be like, well, dude, if you see this as our future, then let's check it out.
We're in.
Yeah, yeah. And yeah, they're packing boxes. We're shipping out of the garage right now, which I absolutely wanted. I take that as kind of like a thing of pride, right? Where I have a 3PL lined up if and when we're ready. When we're ready, we'll get there. But I really I want them to see all the things. And that was a big part of my decision to pursue Bolt as well is, you know, when I was going through the building stages with my photography career, they were really young. And all they would see is dad playing, which is really work. But, you know, I'm going to X destination to shoot fly fishing, or Y destination to shoot skiing, or I'm on the river again, or I'm up, you know, shooting skiing, which just looks like skiing for them, or I'm going to X or Y destination. And so it's hard for those little minds to separate the difference between work and play, even though there is quite a difference there. And they are totally old enough to see the work that has gone into Bolt, to see the stress. They don't see me stressed very often, but, you know, obviously entrepreneurship is a very stressful endeavor. They've seen like the fruits of going from a complete and total like pipe dream of let's make a razor to, okay, we've got some we've got some design concepts, and here's a 3D model, and wow, here's the prototype, and we're holding it in our hands, and now here's the finished product. And they know that it costs time and money and sweat and stress. And eventually I believe that they're going to see the fruits of all those labors as well when Bolt is world domination status.
Yeah. It's awesome. How cool that they can see the process, right?
Yeah.
And be involved in that and kind of understand it. It's, I mean, that's an MBA, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's in your household. It wouldn't surprise me, frankly, that if someday one of those three don't do something big,
Yeah.
if not all three.
I hope so.
You know, there's something about that. There's an energy and a creativity in it. You said it a minute ago about what informs your creativity, you know, as a creator, you know, however you would describe yourself. But that is the same in entrepreneurship. It's really, it's creative problem solving. It's the ability to see a vision of something and then put the things in place to make it happen. And that's cool to see it. It informs a mind entirely different than just product on a shelf, you know?
Yeah.
You know, there's a lot that goes into it, you know, that gets it there. What's been the hardest thing for you in building Bolt? So, I mean, you're running on a track. You know, I saw an Instagram clip, I mentioned it to you. And what I saw, the look on your face and just the tone was accomplished, but fatigue.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of like maybe the creative juice was slowing down on the photography side. And as a creative, in my opinion, this is for me too. If I don't have that shot of adrenaline, for lack of a better term, I can't send the cliff anymore. Back surgeries, 4 knee surgeries, all this stuff. But I find the same rush often in entrepreneurship. Is that what was going on in the transition? I need new horizon.
One pretty much spot on. You know, I think no matter what you're engaged in, you gotta there's a good likelihood whatever you're engaged in, there's some hustle involved, right? And especially in creative freelancing in the world of photography, like you gotta love the hustle. If you'd told me in year 15 that I was hustling, that I'd be hustling as hard as I was in year 3, I would have told you to beat it, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And granted, that hustle was for better clients and more lucrative jobs. And, you know, it was easier on the one hand because I had a portfolio and I had, you know, a body of work and I had a brand and I had a name. You're still, I mean, you are hustling. It is 100% active income. There is very little passive income, especially with stock photography having, you know, checked out quite a few years ago with the advent of digital. So it certainly was that creative fire, like, had kind of, it felt more like work, which I'm okay with. I think people that say, do what you love and you'll never work a day in your life, I think they should be punched in the neck. I think it's always work. But how much can you enjoy it? And I love work, actually. But I'd say the hardest thing with Bolt was raising money, for sure, is getting people to literally buy into your idea when it's just an idea. And what made that even harder is I know myself and my drive and my passion and my stick-to-itiveness and all the fluffy words that people put into a pitch deck or a verbal pitch or whatever else that might ring kind of shallow. But I know that with me, like, they don't. And I could not get them to ring true to very many people, right? Like, I knew, despite the fact that I didn't have a razor and I didn't have shave products and I'd never formulated a shave butter in my life and I'd never concepted an actual consumer goods product, you know? I knew that none of that mattered because for the last 15 years of my life, my career has revolved around the 3 words of figure it out. Because I never knew where my income was coming from more than 3 months out. It's just how it is as a freelancer. And so I just know. And that was also, I just knew that I would get it done. And so to get rejection, and I got a good storied past with rejection. You better be able to shake it off as a creative freelancer. And as a missionary, actually, in Italy, I served a Mormon mission in the heart of the Catholic Church. And you better believe I got a lot of fingers waved in my face. And I hesitate to bring religion into these conversations. I don't know that it's always appropriate, but it has informed a lot of my makeup. And literally, I say between serving a mission in Italy for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints and making my living as a commercial photographer for 15 years, they have been the best training wheels ever for entrepreneurship because you just hear no a ton. And so raising money has been hard. I have a poster on my wall. It's in blue and yellow. It's in bolt blue and yellow. It says, "Watch me." And they're empty letters, and they are filled with the initials of everybody that said no. And there are, to this point, there's 115 initials in there. And nobody could see it but me. It's behind my office door. And I would just glance up at it every day when I was making my calls and pitching people. And I was just like, I'm gonna get this done. I'm gonna do what I need to do. It's just, maybe it's not happening today. It'll happen tomorrow, and then the next day, maybe it's not happening today. It'll happen tomorrow,
This grit is pretty remarkable. As I think about your career as a freelance photographer and Instagram and how everything we see is all the good, all the awesome, all the beautiful, but we don't feel all of the grit that comes with that fantastic photo. And kind of what you're describing. Can you talk a little bit more about what goes on behind the scenes in your makeup to make things happen? I mean, this grit, I don't want to call it the spite that you have on this poster on your wall behind the door, but there's something there.
You can call it that.
Is dry. I mean, there's some drive.
Yeah, we
here.
got to double click on this.
Yeah.
Because I'm fascinated.
Yeah. There's some serious drive here, right? Like Bolt's going to make it.
Yeah.
Right. So maybe share a little bit more about that.
I think real quick too on that, Preston, I'm glad you brought that up because as a creative and especially as a photographer, your goal is to put out the best product for that client or that person, whatever you're shooting for. And then I'm sure there's been times where you're like, this is it, that's the best. And you've heard, like, that's not quite what I thought, and going through that process, clearly, like you mentioned your mission and this years of photography have really helped you learn how to handle that. But I'm sure even though there's a parallel, but it's a different no now with Bolt.
Yeah, I think so. Couple things. Preston, I appreciate the fact that you say like we only ever see the good, because I actually, from a brand building standpoint, I like to always appear super polished, right? There's definitely a juxtaposition to that I'm going to talk about in just a second. But Bolt specifically, if you go on our website, or if I were to send you, like if you receive your box of Bolt product, I want it to look and feel like we've been around forever, that we are the most experienced marketers in brand, and that we've got everything dialed. Now, I'm more than willing to admit that we're not, right? And that's in every package that we ship out right now, and I mean me and my kids, but it includes a founder's note from me that essentially says, first and foremost, this is rad. We're living the dream. And it's not just a me, it's you, me, all of us. You are part of this dream. Like, this doesn't happen without you. It says, that I believe that we're putting out an exceptional product, but you are the most important part of this equation. Like, if you're happy with your Bolt product, we're happy with our Bolt product. But then the important part is that it's like, you kind of admit too, it's like, we're young and we're new. And so your feedback right now is crucial to us continuing to innovate and put out an exceptional product. So please let us know what's going on. And we want the good, we want the bad, we want it all. So I do like to be like super polished, but I feel like I have built my brand, my photography brand, on transparency over the years. And while, I'm very tuned in to like posting just my best work, I actually, at times, I've put up just a black slide, like be like, hey, this is what I got tonight. Like, I came up here with all the hope in the world for this amazing, 5-star image, and this is what we came away with. And we'll go back, until conditions are right. But like, another quick story of that is like always showing your best work. For me, first of all, I remember when I was coming up through photography, and this is the same with entrepreneurship. I'm at the beginning again, but I like to know that the person that is up on the podium or up speaking to me, I like to know that they're very much like me, or more importantly, I'm very much like them. They're just at a little bit more advanced stage. I think that relatability and that human aspect to it is what inspires people, right? Like, that's what makes you believe that you can do whatever it is that they've done to be incredibly successful. I think that is at the very heart of being inspirational. And who doesn't want to inspire other people to be better, and to achieve. So anyway, Powder Magazine back in the day, Dave Reddick, amazing photo editor, one of the most longest running photo editors of any print publication ever. Crazy well respected in the industry. Obviously a very discerning eye. The dude that you really, don't, you want him in your court. You want, and there's kind of this thing that went with ski photography that especially with the advent of digital, and it was, don't ever post your A shots online, because Reddick never wanted to see, he didn't want anybody to see it first. Which makes sense, right? Like, from a print magazine standpoint. But it doesn't make sense as a creator. Like, I'm running my own brand, and Powder's subscription base is maybe 100,000 people versus the internet subscription base of, I don't know, 7 billion.
The World Wide Web.
Right, yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
And so I just decided early on, it's like, nobody knows when I post my work that it's not my best. Sure, some people read the caption, but nobody's going to look at that and be like, that must be the B+ shot. They're going to look at that and be like, they're judging me immediately on what they see instantly. I think that's the beauty of photography. It is, in my opinion, still the medium that can evoke emotion in the least amount of time possible. Quicker than music, quicker than video, quicker than sculpture, quicker than fill in the blank. I think an image can convey and evoke emotion in fractions of a second. And I just decided, I'm like, you know what? Like, I might get 5 or 6 photos published in Powder a year. They pay $200 for a double page spread. It can barely put the rice and beans on the table, right? I'm like, I'm running my A+ stuff. I'm an A+ photographer. I want people to see my A+ work, and more than just the 60,000 or 100,000 people that subscribe to Powder. And And I just made that decision early on. It's like, and eventually that became much more the norm. But I think I kind of got sidetracked a little bit here, but the grittiness, the grittiness, I don't know, man. Let's call it stubborn, like just stubborn pride. I just hate admitting defeat. I want to think that I can do anything. And while I know I can't do everything, I want to think that my physical and mental and emotional makeup will allow me to achieve anything I could ever imagine. And my goal with Bolt is $20 million in revenue by the end of year 5. We've been in business for 3 weeks and we're at 9K revenue. And so the gap is pretty significant, right? But we're a revenue producing company and I have a plan. And it feels good for a brand that was in the womb 3 weeks ago to have proof of concept. And so I want to believe that I can get there. Like, will we? I don't know. But maybe my stubborn pride or grit or whatever else it is that is as equally offending and frustrating for some as it is perhaps beneficial for me at times, maybe that'll get us there.
Adam, you mentioned something a minute ago that I'm fascinated by. So we got to double click on this whole stubbornness thing. You talked about, you described an image, creates emotion. What is it about this poster on your wall that has all the initials on it of the rejections? I mean, you're the engine, right? You're the engine of Bolt. So what is it that you know about yourself that writing on a wall the initials of the rejectors is going to evict emotion in you? Like, you see it often. I'm assuming you see that poster every day.
Every day. I think it's just like, it's less about like an I told you so sort of thing and more like I'm gonna prove you wrong. Like the fact that I wasn't able to convey enough, the fact that you were, and I understand this is how investing, and I do more now than I did before, but the fact that it is so based upon analytics and proven results versus the personal makeup or of whomever might be pitching that to you, regardless of their experience, it kind of pisses me off, to be honest. And I know that now more than ever, obviously, your early investors 100% are investing in you. That's it, because there is no proof of concept. And so for me personally, ultimately, it's kind of a dig, It's kind of like, I can't tell you how many times I heard, we believe in Bolt, we believe in you, we just can't really wrap our heads around it. And I want to be like, well, then don't tell me those first two things. Or at least don't tell me we believe in you. Because if you really believe in me, then you would know that I will do whatever has to be done to make this, a screaming success. Or if not this a screaming success, an important stepping stone into something that will be.
That's awesome. You've mentioned this failure is not an option attitude that you have, which I think is really, really cool. And at times when I've heard it, it's just like, that's not, people can't have that as a mindset. But I've taken that and digested a little bit in my own self of all the times that I've come up short have been such a bigger, significant learning opportunity for what's next than, well, I'm just going to give that up now and move forward, but or not move forward. And I mean, clearly, this is like that is the definition of failure is not an option. And I think it's so cool to actually put that out there and realize that it's a real thing.
Yeah, I mean, let's be honest. Like, if something is on the table, if you are training, who was it? It was the St. George Triathlon or the Ironman, just barely. And again, it was, the relatives that I was staying with, and she said, that one of their buddies had signed up for the triathlon, but they they didn't know. And obviously, like, they're a recreational level triathlete, but they're like, yeah, they're gonna wake up in the morning and decide whether they're doing it or not. I'm like, well, I think the writing's on the wall right there. Like, if you, I mean, a triathlon is not fun. It could be fun for parts, just like Park City Point to Point isn't fun, or Lodija isn't fun, or fill in the blank with whatever, or maybe it's your Nike race, or, you know, whatever it is that's causing you to suffer. If human nature is to bail on stuff that isn't fun, we want to have fun all the time, right? Like, so and that's part of why, you know, I had to really give up photography. And it's also why I gave up, and I don't want to say gave up. Photography will always be a part of me, for sure. It will always, you know, it will always live in me, and I'll always want to shoot pictures. But it's the same thing that happened when I transitioned in 2008. It's like, I really don't believe in straddling the fence. I don't believe in keeping one foot on this side and one foot on that side, because I just don't think you'll ever realize, like, your full potential with whatever endeavor that might be unless you're fully committed. I had one potential investor come to me with Bolt, and they're like, why don't you just go with a template razor? Like, why don't you just, you know, kind of test the waters with grab, like, you know, whatever's, like, obviously there's a bunch of Chinese manufacturers out there. I found them. You can go online and you can find, you know, a template razor that they make, and you can slap your colors on it and your logo, and then put it out there and see how it goes. And I just, like, it didn't matter how badly I needed their money. That wasn't even, I wouldn't touch that with a 10-foot pole, because I don't believe that does justice to the idea of Bolt. And I don't believe that would give you like legitimate market feedback. Like, that's no different than anything else is out there. Like, we designed a razor that's quite heavy. You know, it's a family heirloom, man. You get that, you're handing it down to your grandkids. But it feels balanced. It feels different for men that have been using a razor that's been designed for women. You know, you've had razors for shaving faces for men, and you've had razors for shaving legs for women. And face razors are designed to be used upright out of the shower. And we've designed a razor for men with larger hands that's designed to be used upside down in the shower ergonomically. It makes a huge difference. Then the cartridge, the blades that are actually, you know, cutting the hair, it's got a lubricating layer of vitamin E and aloe vera on the outside. I know I'm getting super salesy here, but I'm telling you why I would not go with the template, because I believed that we needed to put A+ product out there to get a real sense of whether this was going to be a successful venture or not. And that's just not how I'm not a template person. I hate templates, you know.
There's so much here, and, you know, for our audience who are listening, whether you are a founder, whether you're an entrepreneur wannabe, you know, I mean, there's so much here that is a masterclass on, you know, entrepreneurship. You know, things like, I'm all in. You know, I don't template. Like, that's differentiation. Like, there's so much depth to what you're talking about, and meaningful. And I think, you know, when I go back to, you know, your description of even working with investors, how much of the pitch deck was really about you? I mean, the concept is one thing, but like you said, they're really buying into you. You know, I mean, was there enough in there that told enough of your story and your grit? You know, the initials on the wall, like, what kind of guy are we getting here? You know, did they know you?
It's hard. That's a great question. There's so much pressure when you're putting a pitch deck to have it be really tight and concise, right? Like, don't have it over 10 pages. Don't have it over 12 pages. I think ultimately, after editing down, I settled at like 17 pages. But I felt like those 17 pages were very, like, that was it. That was like the bare minimum. I had cut pages out. So this is a major public confession incoming. But the very first line of my pitch deck in big bold letters said, I was a cheerleader in high school, which I was. it was cool. Okay. Like, I think it was cool for a second.
Highland High.
That's right. That's right. How can you not keep reading? Like once, and that was the idea. And the next lines were, now that you're in the circle of trust, basically, let me tell you what's going on here. So I did put like a pretty good page together, for me as a founder. Sometimes I feel like, I'm sensitive to making it too much about me, but a smart founder, and this is advice for anybody that's in the process, a smart founder needs to understand that it is about them. And I think you need to I'm sensitive to what could maybe appear as like ego padding and pounding your chest. But I learned a long, long time ago with photography, the difference between padding your ego and legitimate self-promotion in establishing yourself as a business and a brand and a believable vehicle for whatever you're doing.
I think there's so much there, though, in terms of just what fuel did you need to keep going? And I hope that listeners, my takeaway from you is that's it. Like, you keep going, that it isn't failure unless you just throw in the towel. It's just learning, it's moving. And more importantly, there's so much there about the chips on your shoulder. I mean, to really be a founder and to really take it the distance, for you to go to 20 million in revenue from 9K, I think you said it is, you're going to need a lot of chips. And I think you've earned that right. I think it's awesome, But the other component is, I've been an investor, I've been an entrepreneur. I just yesterday made my second largest investment I've ever made outside of my own businesses. And both instances, the largest and the second largest, were me spending a year getting to know the people behind the business, right? That it still is about people, And if you're working with investors who are just into like, the product or the widget on the shelf, I don't think you want them, because they'll never appreciate and value the impact that you have as the person behind it all. And so whoever it is, who's ever on board now, they're investing in you, and that's who you want. That's from my experience, that's who you want on your bus. So it's cool. It's cool to just kind of hear that stuff. The takeaway for some of our listeners, I hope you hear that, the chips on the shoulder. Because there are going to be moments where, at least in my experience, that you're going to need to dig deep into emotion, and sometimes like anger that comes from rejection, anger of other people, there is a fire there, So I want to pivot on that, because I think there's grit. Preston asked about grit, but there's this other chip on the shoulder that's not a negative one. We tend to think about it that way, but it's grace. I think about grit and grace. They serve me all the time. What is the grit that I had to do that's hard to get to where I am? But what is the grace that also got me there, which is gifts from people I don't deserve? So talk about that just for a minute. Who have been the mentors? Who have been the people where you're like, man, I don't deserve this grace, but someone picked me up and mentored me or taught me or opened a door? Do you have any of those chips?
So many people, man. One of my MOs is like, I really want to inform myself as much as possible, and it could be anybody from like Kevin next to me, where we go and we're going on a backcountry tour, and I'm picking his brain about, okay, what razors do you use? Like, do you care about shaving your legs? Like, do you think people care about shaving their legs? Like, what do you think about this idea? And, it's everything from that to, I had a conversation with this crazy bigwig CPG M&A guy. He's got a big law firm out in New York. I got connected to him I had actually shot this guy's anniversary. He was a guest at the Montage Hotel, and I don't really do much in the way of like anything. I won't shoot weddings. I won't touch that with a 10-foot pole. You want somebody shooting your wedding that wants to shoot your wedding, and I don't want to shoot it. But, this was actually a cool connection, and we hopped on a private jet, went to central Utah, Went and did some rad hikes down there and saw some petroglyphs and old archaeological sites. It was actually through a really good fly fishing guide buddy of mine who also does some guiding for them. Anyway, I'm making this story kind of long, but it's important. And this gentleman whose anniversary I'd shot connected me with this guy. And it's the type of guy that, I mean, if he's got 5 minutes in the day to chat with little old me, like talking about men shaving their legs, like good freaking luck.
Everybody needs Brene Brown, bro.
Yeah, sure.
Everybody needs
right.
Brene Bro Brown.
Right.
That's
Like,
right. But he was kind enough to give me 30 minutes and he shot straight. You know, he's like, he told me one of the best pieces of advice, and I haven't forgotten this. He's like, dude, you're coming to me and you're wanting me to build a Ferrari and put gas in it. He's like, build the Ferrari and I'll put the gas in it. And I was like, can I get that on a poster like right now? And it was early in this journey. And I was like, dude, I got some building to do. Anyway, so somebody like him and, you know, so many people in my network, whether I'm firing off, like, I'm like, okay, here's the script for our launch video. What do you think about this? Or take a look at these visuals. Here's my like, I've touched everything in Bolt. I've done the copywriting for the website, for all the packaging. I wrote the script for, you know, our launch video. We have an animated instructional video that we've got a QR code in the packaging for the razor that links to an animated instructional video on how to shave your legs. I wrote the script for that. I reached out to a dude. I saw his work on a Red Bull TV series on Kai Lenny, and this is a great story, but I'll try and keep it short. But he's a Brazilian-born Welshman living in Romania, and I was like, man, I think one of the greatest opportunities for Bolt is to be a resource for men who shave their legs. Like, we never learn how to do it. Either you get like some quick tips from your wife or your girlfriend, or you just freaking pick up a razor and you get out of the shower looking like you wrestled with a chainsaw, you know? And so I'm like, dude, like, it makes sense. Let's be a resource. Like a Traeger grills, for example. They make amazing grills. They're great. You know, it's not like there aren't other equally awesome grills out there, but their brilliance is in their community and their resources and in their recipes and all the people that are cooking, and the fact that if you can read directions, you can be a freaking hero on the grill. You can cook up ribs and you know, people be like, you've been doing this your whole life. And you know, it's a little optimistically naive to think that we could ever be that for men's leg shaving, but it adds value, right? Anyway, nobody wants to see a dude shaving their legs. I've been doing it forever, and I don't really even want to see it. So I'm like, let's find a way. It's got to be animated. It's got to be self-deprecating. It's got to be fun and funny, but it's also got to be informative. Dialed this guy up, and we jumped on an Instagram, or I found him on Instagram. We jumped on a Zoom. You know, he's in Romania. It's crazy technology that we can connect like that. And we ended up with a really great product. But, you know, there's been so many people I've met with pretty legitimate investors and family offices that have given, frankly, you know, a guy that probably shouldn't have their time at the stage that I was pitching them. They did give me their time. And if you can receive what's being said in a way that informs and motivates as opposed to just rejection, it's incredibly valuable. If you don't have that built into you, then you're just going to go home, cry every day.
yeah. Yeah. Say those words again.
If you can receive what you've had, you know, if you can receive this rejection and you can receive what they're giving you in an educational and an informative way, it's going to do you a lot of good. And if you're not built that way, then you're just going to go have a good cry.
It's huge. Stubborn and, you know, closed mindset founders don't go far. I think that's so brilliant. You just described that. The thing that stuck with me, you know, and it hit me again just a minute ago, but you are literally figure it out. That's just those 3 words. You said that in the beginning, but that's huge. Figure it out. What a mindset.
Thank you. You know, is there any other way? Really? Like, if you want to, I say this a lot too. If you want to be the man, you got to be the man. Or if you want to be the woman, you got to be the woman. Fill in the blank. Like, I feel like there is this perception in, you know, Preston, to your point of like just seeing like the 5-star images on my photo channel. We keep bouncing back and forth, but they're so related, right? I've always said the biggest difference between a professional photographer and an amateur is that professional doesn't show you his amateur images, because there's a lot of them. Like, you shoot, everybody asks like how I got to where I was. Everybody asks like how I got to where I was in photography. And when I'm frank, and I always am, it's like, well, I shot a lot of crappy photos and a couple of good ones along the way. You know, 10,000 hours, there's no skipping that 10,000 hours. And I think that's what people, you know, especially some of the youth growing up, and this isn't like dogging on the youth at all. I just want people to know you still got to work. You got to work hard. A very, very small number of people get lucky, but most of it is tied to hard work. And that will serve you so much better in the end, because let's say you're lucky for a day and something blows up. Like, that is so temporary. And the grit that you get from working hard, that's going to inform like your character and your output and your behavior for your entire lifetime.
We live in such an instant gratification world where that resonates so well. And people are always looking for the next hack, which I've never loved that term. Here's, you know, the hack to get yourself in shape or whatever. And it's like, it takes work. Like, that's really what it takes, and time, but encompassing in that is the work. And if people they're not willing to put in that work, or they want to just live by hacks, like, it's going to fade. And they don't realize that. But when you see these efforts that have been ongoing for so long, it's fascinating. And that's, again, the definition of how it's made.
Yeah, I mean, work builds confidence, right? Mm-hmm. When you see a result from work, it gives you confidence that you can do it again. Whereas if you're just lucky, then you're waiting. You're like, am I ever going to get lucky again? Versus, dude, I can do the work. Whatever this is, I'll do the work. And I know that that'll get me a result in some way, shape, or form.
That's huge. Confidence to figure it out over and over. Same principle, right? It's interesting that you still go back and utilize the same principles and the same characteristics, whether it's Bolt, whether it's photography, or whatever else, you know, comes in the future. It's still going to be, I'm just going to figure it out. I've done it before, you know. Freestyle, anything, man.
Okay.
Any one just looping thread, you know, in your head that always is going on, that you think this is always here. It's always in my mind.
Yeah, I mean, I hate to be cliche, but the cliches are cliches because they're true. And what I would say to like anybody listening out there is, whatever you dream of doing, like, first of all, dream of doing. Like, don't let anybody ever tell you not to dream of doing something. That is a terrible, sad existence. Like, have aspirations, be inspired, you know, let yourself be inspired by other people's accomplishments instead of being angry and feeling like you deserve something. Don't ever feel like you deserve anything. Feel like you, like, know that if you work for it, you're probably going to be rewarded. But man, just like, don't ever let anybody tell you like that's ridiculous. Even if it is ridiculous, find that out for yourself. You know, like, I guess be able to receive the input of others, but mesh them with your own vision. And that's an interesting place for me right now, is like, I am very green to this space that I live in, like in entrepreneurship. On the one hand, I'm not, because I've been, you know, a creative freelancer for many, many years, but by and large, I am, is the founder of a CPG company. And so I'm kind of a sponge right now, but I also think it's incredibly important to have like a direction that you're going. So it's important not to let yourself be influenced, but don't ever lose that gut instinct that you have, because that's what separates you from everybody else. Like, so many times you get this advice from people and it just matches what is already out there. And don't let what's already out there be a template for what could be. There's no brand for men who shave their legs. Like, it's ridiculous, right? To a lot of people, it's ridiculous. And that's okay, because, and maybe in the end, maybe it will prove itself to be ridiculous, but there's so much to be learned in the making of this brand and in the journey. And in the end, life is more than riches and, possessions. Like, if I come out of this a richer person in character and in makeup and in experience, sure, like, maybe I'm not going to be buying that island that I was planning on, but I think it'll still be a solid journey.
I've as I sit here, I think confession myself is I'm a dreamer. Like, probably like you, I've dreamt a lot about great ideas, but I've never had the courage to leave the comforts of everything that I have. And you've managed to do that with a career that you've had great success with. So my takeaway is the amount of respect I have for you to be able to not straddle the fence, which you've mentioned twice, and take that step and actually do it. Like, I think that's really remarkable, because I think a lot of people dream, but the do is the hard part. It's the hard part for me. So hats off.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Anything else you want to say about Bolt?
You can find us at boltshave.com. You can find us on Instagram at boltskinshave. And I would say that, we're young and we're new and we need people that believe in what we're doing. And I promise you, this is what I'm finding in our reviews, like, and in our consumers so far. People don't know, like, men, we're taking an activity that for men has been mostly, or if not completely, for those that do it, it's been completely overlooked and totally unacknowledged, and we're turning that into an experience. And so it's the type of thing where you didn't realize you needed it until you started using it. It's like an electronic tailgate on your car. You're like, I didn't realize I needed that, and now I can't live without it. So if you're a man who shaves his legs, I'm telling you, there's a better way, buddy. And it's called Bolt.
It's awesome. It's Mother's Day this week, but for Father's Day, all those mothers listening in, Bolt.
That's right.
Bolt it for June.
We're going to do our Father's Day campaigns coming up. It's based around Smooth Move, Dad.
Nice.
Yeah.
Plenty of content there.
Lots of content.
Featuring Adam and his kids in Lake Powell.
Yeah. Totally.
Thanks for being on.
Thank you, guys. I've really,
awesome.
really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Sweet.
Thank you.
Super cool. You've had your daily dose.